Welcome back to The Great Retention with Camber Parker, sponsored by the YoProKnow. I'm Camber, founder and CEO of YoProKnow, where we bring you strategies to cultivate a dynamic and multi-generational workforce. Whether you're looking to enhance cross-generational communication or secure your company's future with dedicated professionals, we've got you covered. Today, I am so excited to have Carl Sobocinski, president at Table 301, joining us right here in Greenville, South Carolina. Carl has been a major driving force in the revitalization of downtown Greenville over the years and Greenville's culinary scene since the mid-1990s. Recently, Carl and I have joined the board of the Greenville Chamber of Commerce, and I asked him to join me today to cover the challenges facing the hospitality industry and some of the successes, and what recruiting and retention looks like in this space today. Carl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Happy to have you here. And as somebody who is a big fan of Table 301, this is a big moment for me. So I'm really thrilled to have you. We're going to start by doing what I like to call a lightning round. So in a couple of sentences or less, answer these questions. So first up, what is something that is not on your resume?
Well, as a teenager, I worked on a dairy farm for about 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, see, that's what I hate about the lightning round because I'm like, I want to ask more, but for the sake of time, I won't. But I always learn a lot during that question. If you were not in the restaurant business, what would you be doing?
Probably something to do with sports.
Okay, big sports fan.
Yeah, I grew up in New England, and so big Red Sox, Patriots, Bruins, Celtics fan. Wanted to play left field for the Red Sox as a kid. But if I wasn't in this business, I'd probably be doing something for a team in sports industry.
Okay. I grew up in Baltimore, so I'm a Ravens fan.
Nice.
Sorry. Name a restaurant that you'd love to visit but haven't yet.
So on my list right now is Lola's in New York City. Chef Suzanne or Susie Cups just opened it. She's a South Carolina native, but made a name for herself up in New York City. And so that's high on my list.
Great. If it's high on your list, then I'll remember that one. What is your favorite dish from a Table 301 restaurant? I know that's probably hard. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask it, but
it's kind of like which of your children is your favorite.
Right.
So being from New England, the Jones Oyster Company has the lobster roll and a fried clam roll. And so the fried clam roll is something that I can used to only be able to get in New England. So that's probably tops. And then we just opened a new restaurant, Tavola, out at Bridgeway Station. And the lasagna on Wednesday nights is my go-to.
Okay, that is really good. I'm a huge fan of all of your restaurants, but I really do love the Jones Oyster Company. It's so great. All right, last lightning question. What is your preferred style of communication when at work?
So I use all of them. I think with different team members, text works. With different team members, email works better. And then always my go-to if I'm there and we're in person is to meet in person and have a little stand-up 2-minute conversation. Yeah,
the key is to be able to utilize all of them, right? But I do hear in person is a fan favorite for most people, regardless of age, I would say. All right, let's dive into the meat of our conversation today, where we are talking about hiring and retaining team members in hospitality. So we know that the hospitality industry is known for high turnover generally, and finding the right talent can be a big challenge. What strategies have you implemented at Table 301 to not only attract but retain top talent, and how do you ensure your team remains motivated in such a demanding field?
So it's a great question, and I think early on, I've been doing this a little over 30 years now, and I knew that this was going to be my career. So I made a conscious effort with my former business partner that we wanted this to be a career opportunity for people, and as such, we were going to treat our restaurant and our restaurant group as not to be corporate, to be too structured, still have that mom and pop family feel, but have all the benefits that you would get in corporate America. So we've been very conscious about making sure we had healthcare, 401k, retirement plans, continuing education opportunities. We have a couple of associates right now that are it's an internship, but in the industry it's called a stage. We have some folks that are staging right now at a restaurant in DC. Some others another gentleman going up to Chicago to stage for a week.
Great.
So we send them out on these opportunities to continue to grow and to learn more about the industry and feel like it's a place that they can make a full-time career out of.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like I'm hearing the internship where they're kind of going off-site, which is almost an apprenticeship of sorts, like they're getting the hands-on work.
Yeah, it's great to see what others do. And if they hear me standing up talking about an experience I went and enjoyed, and I'd really love to see us do this, that this one restaurant does or another one does, it's great for them to actually go experience it, whether that's give them a couple $100 and send them to dinner there so they have that same experience, or if it's saying, hey, we're going to give you a week's time off, paid time off, but we're also going to pay for you to go spend a week in this restaurant.
Yeah, I think that's great. Let's talk about turnover for a second, because I think across the board, hospitality industry really does suffer from high turnover. I don't know if that's necessarily the case with Table 301 based on the research that I've done. Is that fair to say? Or, how would you kind of describe the layout of the hospitality industry right now?
Yeah, I think for us and for our group, it's lower than the national average. It's still one of our top challenges. But again, going back to treating it like a career and giving people opportunity for growth and moving up within our company has reduced our issue of turnover.
Yeah.
And also having multiple concepts. If somebody spends 2 years, 3 years at one of our restaurants and they kind of feel like they're getting burned out or they're not progressing or learning, we have a great opportunity to send them to one of the other restaurants and kind of see a different style of cuisine and service. And so that kind of freshens it up and keeps them from, jumping ship and heading to one of our competitors.
Yeah, I like that. I had not really thought of that, but you have how many concepts now?
So we have 6 full-service concepts, and then we've got catering, which is very diverse, and then we've got our food truck and a couple of private event venues.
Great. Yeah, I just hadn't really thought about the diversity just within, and so that probably spices things up a little bit and makes people excited. So it's almost like they could be kind of going to a new job, but it's all within the same house. So I think that's great. We just touched on challenges a little bit, but from staffing to supply chain issues, I imagine there's just a different one every day in the industry and with multiple concepts. So what would you say has been the toughest challenge that you faced, and how did you overcome it? Have you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Daily, it's a different challenge, it seems like, every day. Although what's at the top of the list right now and has been for quite some time is workforce. And just, through COVID, people started working from home. And so now it's kind of a hybrid for a lot of businesses and a lot of people. Well, in the hospitality industry, you really can't work from home. You can't prepare the food at home. You can't serve the guests and take care of them. So we need people to be in the workplace. We also work nights and weekends and holidays when most others are celebrating and spending time with their family. So those are some of the challenges, are just convincing people and showing them that it's a great workplace and we get to celebrate everybody's best moments. And we have flexible work schedules, which is also a benefit. But yeah, as far as the challenges go, it varies. Inflation at times is a challenge. Supply chain issues are a challenge. Rising food costs are a challenge. But singularly right now, it remains finding that workforce that fits what we're looking for.
Yeah, and as I'm hearing you talk about this, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, workforce really is the number one challenge that people are facing. And when we're still in a post-pandemic workplace, right? We are in the new norm now. And, that's something that also was probably pretty significant for y'all when that happened. And so do you feel like you're still seeing the impacts from that?
Not so much this year as we were in 22 and 23. But as far as challenges go, COVID was certainly the greatest challenge that we faced. And we didn't know if we were going to close restaurants, lose staff. We did a lot of things right during that time. And in South Carolina, as you know, we were one of the first to open back up with precautions and limited seating and things like that. So that brought our workforce back to work pretty quickly. And while that was one of the most challenging times, I look back on it now and see how some of the challenges that we faced really made us better and stronger at what we do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So switching gears a little bit, I'm really excited about this question because it's something I've heard about through the grapevine over the years, but you have led efforts from within to incubate and help grow new local restaurants, with mentoring playing a really big part in this work. You've mentored many in your industry. So what is the most valuable lesson that you've learned as a leader, and how do you pass that on to your team? And if you want to share anything about that program that I just alluded to, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, thank you. So a few things happen in life. Everybody has phases in life and different birthdays and moments. And so I was going through Liberty Fellowship and really looking deep inside at, was I being impactful? Was my work impactful? What else could I do? What was needed in our community? And so I'd been doing restaurants for about 20 years. And as I just mentioned, we celebrate everybody's best moments, and sometimes they're sad moments as well. But we're there for those moments, and we provide a place where people can come and enjoy and relax and be together. So I remind myself that our work is valuable and it is important and impactful. However, I started thinking, okay, well, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life, and how am I going to unwind it, or how do we? What's the succession plan? And so, just looking within our team, I realized that, there's so many people that have helped me chase my dream, have helped me achieve a lot more than I ever thought I would achieve, whatever measurement tool you use for that. And so I threw it out to a couple of our associates and said, I think I want to start turning some of these restaurants over to our leaders. And everybody looked at me like, what a brilliant idea. How are you going to do that? What's the upside? What's the downside? And so we started with Jorge Barales, Papi's Tacos. Mm-hmm. And I'd always joked that we were going to open a store together and that one day it would be his. But I guess in the back of my mind, it wasn't really joking. It was, come on, Papi, you and me, we're going to do Papi's Tacos. And so we had opened that store, and he'd been running it. It was all him. It was his personality, his recipes, his formulas, family heritage. And so I said, Papi, I think it's time for you to look at taking over this restaurant. And so we came up with a plan and how he could do that, and made it very affordable for him, but still to have some skin in the game. And so that was back in 2019, and that was the first of 5 restaurants that we've now transitioned and sold to a manager or a chef. Wow. And so Papi was the first, and he is now he's just opened his second store last year. So he's expanding and growing, and it just, it's a great feeling to know that, similar to Pay It Forward, I guess, you're helping, those that helped me get as far along as we have, and be impactful in the community. And I think the most important thing is, before we decide who this is going to be, who's going to take it over, I'm a real big proponent of our culture that we've created. And we talk a lot about, we call it the law of value, from a wonderful book by Bob Berg called The Go-Giver. And the law of value states that your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. And we just you can say that in a lot of ways, right? Exceeding expectations, going above and beyond, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done to you. So if we find the people, and really in hospitality, you kind of have to have that gene that has that same go-giver spirit. Once we find those people and we know that they'll take what we've created together, and continue to let it grow and live with that culture of hospitality, then we know we've got the right person. Yeah, so.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. It's really fascinating to hear it from your perspective. And, kudos to you. I think that's really inspiring that you've now had 5 people do that. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And I know that number is probably going to continue to grow.
Hopefully. So the new intent, as we opened Jones a couple of years ago, just opened Tavola, is that I don't want to go into anything without a succession plan. Yeah. So there's people in place in both of those restaurants that will likely take them over.
Great. And we'll come back to succession plans. So I'm glad that you brought that up. But let's talk about the multi-generational staff that you have, right? So whether they're people who are waiting tables, people in your HR and people operations, all of the above, how do you really foster collaboration and understanding among different age groups, especially given the fast-paced nature of your industry? And I'm assuming, you just talked about culture, right?
Yeah.
And this giving mentality. I'm assuming that you would answer maybe in a similar way, but is there anything when we're talking about just a broad range of ages, particularly because you probably have some young folks who are working for you as well?
Oh, yeah.
Like really young.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm glad you've forced me to think about it a little bit. I will note one of the things that there's been some frustration, as I think a lot of folks have had potentially with the last couple of generations. I have been exceedingly impressed with the most recent group of teenagers that have worked with us the last 2 summers. And they give me great hope and inspiration for the future. And I think that's probably typical of every generation. The baby boomers probably thought that the next generation was worthless and slackers.
History repeats itself.
Whatever you want to call it. So I've been guilty of, kind of thinking that, seeing and feeling that about some of the younger workforce. But the thing that I try to do, and I try to remind everybody when they get bent out of shape over somebody's performance is, and you asked me earlier about communication, which form, the in-person. You really have to sit down and look at the person and have a conversation with them. And so I try to, in mentoring and in leadership conversations, we really talk about, try to meet the person where they are, listen to what they have to say, explain your position to them, but really hear where they're coming from. And we also have to understand and know a little bit about, and not everybody falls into the category of the generation they're in, but a lot of the younger generation they're very philanthropic. They're very concerned with taking care of others, taking care of the environment. And so those things all lend themselves to hospitality. So somebody may not be quite as driven to work as hard or as many hours as you, but they still have the same intent and goals of taking care of others and being hospitable. And so we have to figure out how to put those two things together and blend them together. But I think the greatest way to do that is to sit down and to know that everybody has a voice and everybody can be heard, and we can talk about it together and collaborate that way. Yeah,
I'm really glad that you said that. I mean, it's meeting people where they are, and that's a huge theme that we try to get across when we're traveling across the country to audiences and speaking to them. It's if you're trying to send a message, right, how much more effective would you be if you were able to do it in a way that meets somebody where they are? And then you teach them how you prefer to communicate, right? You set the expectation, but then you're setting a precedent for the future, right? So they're able to, that's a trickle-down leadership effect. And so, yeah, you couldn't have said it better than myself. So thank you for bringing that up. And another thought that I had as you were answering that is, maybe you do have some really young workers who are interacting with your clientele, right? And people who are customers and restaurant goers. So that probably brings an interesting dynamic as well. Have you dealt with any challenges with that, or is it all kind of going back to just sitting down with them, setting the expectation, and they perform the way that you need them to perform?
Yeah, I think with the younger employees, we spend a little more time with them because generally it's their first job, it's their first time out. One of the challenges is we have to tell them that they don't need their device and that they have to put their device away and look people in the eyes. And I get a lot of I guess my contemporaries whose children are working with me, and they're very grateful for the jobs that we give them in the hospitality industry because they're teaching their children to look people in the eye, to have a conversation, to troubleshoot and make decisions. You might have a 7:30 reservation, and it's 7:30 and your table's not ready. And so we're teaching these young people how to deal with a little bit of adversity and how to speak to an older, guest that's coming in and tell them that, hey, it's just going to be a few minutes. We'll take great care of you. And so there's some great life skills that become a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I was really curious about that take. I was, you always hear people say everybody needs to have experience in the service industry. And I couldn't agree more, but it really does give you those valuable skills and lessons. I was kind of unusual, and I worked at an independent living dining hall, which is a little different,
Okay.
but it was a fine dining experience. And I would, did it for 4 years, and I had to remember people's names. So slightly different, but it was the hardest job I've ever had. I mean, truly, it was challenging. And so I can only imagine in an industry that's outside of the walls of an assisted living home, what that experience was like. And I do believe everybody needs some kind of experience in there.
So I know you're asking the questions, but when you say it was the hardest job, like what about it? Because people say that a lot. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I agree that it's difficult, mm-hmm. but I also think, man, it's so rewarding.
Oh, it is.
And if you love what you do, then mm-hmm. it's actually, I don't know. I don't think of it as hard or difficult anymore. It's challenging from time to time.
I love that you're asking a question. So I will, and I hear what you're saying. For me, just because it was the most challenging job I've had, it doesn't mean that I didn't. It was so rewarding. I have kept in touch with a lot of the people that were residents there, and they still invite me back. Like, it was such a great experience. But I think what was so hard is I was 19 when I started, and so or 18, and so those kind of formative years where I was really gaining some skills that customer service, it's the experience, right? And I definitely remember like, oh my God, I don't have my phone on me for 4 hours. Like it. So what you're saying is valid, but I do think that those are certain skills that you need to learn at that age, if not earlier. So not to monopolize the time here because we're asking you the questions, but thanks for asking. So let's talk about, younger generations. Keep kind of talking about this theme. They will make up Gen Z and millennials more than 2/3 of the workforce by 2030. How will this shift impact your business? So you've already shared that, you are hopeful for the future, but what is that going to look like going even farther into the future? Gen Alpha, you're probably hiring some Gen Alpha members in the coming years. So what does that look like?
That's a great question that I wish I had an answer for. The way I'm approaching it is that, not just the generation, but the times have changed. And so technology is playing a more relevant part in our business. But as I referred to earlier, we still have to prepare the food. We have to be in the restaurant actually doing all these things. And there's only so many things you can turn over to technology. Now, in the airport and in some quick service, we can eliminate people with online ordering and apps and front-facing screens, but that doesn't really work in a more fine dining establishment. So I think we're just really focused on finding individuals from all those generations that we're working with that really embrace hospitality and that they want to be there and be a part of it. And we're just trying to build our team with some of the best associates that are out there, work them up into leadership positions so that then they can start working with their peers and their groups in that same generation to bring them along to be a part of the industry.
Great. Let's touch on, in our last couple of questions, I would love to kind of dive into the research that shows young professionals today are choosing to work at companies that give them the opportunity to live well, with an emphasis on benefits and wellness opportunities. We've talked a little bit about benefits today, but we also know that in Greenville and in many other areas of the country, finding affordable housing or transportation can be a challenge. So what types of benefits, if any, are you offering your team, and how do you see that evolving in the future? I know that's a big question.
Yeah, we can hit on a lot of different areas there. So again, benefits that the corporate America seems to have, 401k and healthcare, we did that a long time ago. Wellness and health and wellness has become more relevant in our industry, paying attention to it. Yesterday we had our all-staff manager meeting, and one of our leaders announced that we've got a run club that's starting on Thursday mornings.
Great.
So, we're trying to engage and bring our team in. We have memberships at gyms and facilities that they can join for discounted rates that we've helped provide. The big thing that you mentioned is transportation and housing, and it's a heavy lift. This affordable housing, this workforce housing issue is something I've been involved with and trying to beat that drum for quite some time. One little thing that we did to try to bring attention to it, but also to kind of show that we cared about it and we wanted to do something, is we've got a $200 a month stipend or assistance, rent assistance, that we've worked out with one of the downtown apartment complexes.
Great.
So if our associates, they have to qualify on their own. They have to go through the application. But if they decide to live there, then we'll pay $200 a month towards their rent. Now, a lot of people will say, well, why don't you just pay higher wages? And I think we do already pay higher and competitive wages, the highest competitive wages in our industry in Greenville. But this is something that you can make a direct impact, on their rent. You pay the higher wages, it gets taxed, and it doesn't end up being as much. They end up having other circumstances, and they don't end up using it for the rent. So we've had several associates that have taken advantage of that and been a part of it, and they're very appreciative. But honestly, we're not solving the problem until we have, larger numbers of workforce housing available.
Yeah.
And there's some incentives now that are helpful, but when a developer only has to put 10% workforce housing into a 200-unit facility, those 20 units aren't making a dent. We need the entire 200 units to fit into that mode. We've got a beautiful community, beautiful downtown, beautiful upstate, hiking, cycling. People want to move here. They're moving here in droves. But a lot of the jobs that we provide in hospitality and in service and teachers and public servants, they're wonderful jobs. They're something that people should be proud of, but they're not paying commensurate with the rising housing costs here. So it's something that a lot of people are addressing, but I hope that we get some fast action on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for touching on a lot of different areas there, because that's a really important topic. To wrap things up, I do want to come back around to succession planning finally. But before we do that, food has an incredible way of bringing people together, regardless of age or background. How do you see your restaurants as spaces where different generations connect and share experiences? And how do you ensure that Table 301, your approach, caters to the diverse preferences of not only a multi-generational clientele, but just a general diverse clientele?
So each restaurant, we give the chef a lot of autonomy to fit within. Lazy Goat is Mediterranean, so we want foods that touch on all the countries that touch the Mediterranean. Sobeys is New South cuisine. We want kind of Southern, historical, traditional recipes and menus. But the bottom line is that we want people to feel welcome, and we want them to feel like there's something on the menu that they can get. It's not intimidating. It's very approachable, because to me, people will ask me, what's your best dining experience you've ever had? And honestly, I forget the food in a matter of days. I love it. I love what the chefs do, but I remember the people I'm with. I remember the experience. And so we talk a lot about that the experience in our restaurants should be for the guests and for the people that they're with. So we need to be on point with our food and our service and our beverages, but really it's about how we treat them and how we read the table and identify, are there 4 generations at this table and they're celebrating grandpa's birthday, or are there, is this a first date, or is this a graduation celebration? And just kind of understand what the group is there for, and then cater the service and the experience to that group of people that's there. But we seriously talk about that nonstop, about this experience and identifying the guest and identifying the table and reading the table, so that we can deliver. I think that's how we stand apart from others. Everybody, if you look up and down Main Street, your menus are pretty consistent. You can go get a salad, you can go get a steak, you can go get a piece of fish, you can go get shrimp and grits. But what sets us apart is how we take care of those guests that are at our tables.
Yeah, and I mean, as a prior guest and ongoing guest, I can certainly say that the experience definitely is what I remember. So I really like that. You might forget the food shortly after, but it's the people and the experience that you have that you remember. So Carl, this has been a really amazing conversation today, and I, as a Greenville, resident. It's been really fascinating for me. But how we apply this back to all of the audience members who are listening, the business leaders, who are, both in hospitality and beyond, I think you have given a lot of really practical tips and tools that people can apply to their own workforces. So my final question for you today is, you mentioned succession planning earlier. What does the future of Table 301 look like? And how are you looping in certain conversations about where does Table 301 go next?
So Table 301, we're kind of transitioning, and we've called ourselves a restaurant group. And so now we're working on the next phase, which is Table 301 hospitality. And within that, we will continue to incubate and develop and create new concepts that others will take over. We are looking to do a Table 301 University, where we teach some of the best practices, some of the things that have made us successful. And we'll teach those internally as well as to our legacy restaurants that have come out of the group, and potentially, create a little business model that we can teach this to others that might be interested.
Very cool.
So those are some of the things from succession standpoint. I have 2 daughters that are 17 and 19, and I've always told them that, this is here if it's something that you think you want to do, but I'm not, forcing you into it. I would be honored if you did want to. So they're kind of in the back pocket as a potential option. And then the last thing I would say is, a lot of people create a business and then they want to sell the business. And for me, I don't know. I think I would like to just tell the listeners or try to impart some other thoughts on, you don't have to sell your business to the highest bidder. You can get great satisfaction, and you can potentially allow that business to have a longer life period if you sell it internally to somebody like we're doing, and make it profitable for myself, for Table 301. You can't just give it away. But make it where it's mutually beneficial. It's affordable for them to be able to purchase, and we owner finance the restaurant, so we don't ask them to go out and try to borrow money, because quite frankly, they would probably be doing it themselves if they could. Right. So we owner finance it, and we definitely leave some money on the table, if you will, compared to what a highest bidder might go. But the satisfaction and the knowledge that you've helped other people, that you've built the right team, and that they're going to continue to carry that business on, hopefully for another 20, 30, 40 years. And that you've helped provide somebody an opportunity to build generational wealth and a nest egg for their family, and putting their kids through school and all that stuff. So that's kind of the succession plan in a lot of different areas that what we're looking to do.
That's great. I'll be really interested to follow along and see how this hospitality and university takes place as well, because I'm really fascinated by that. But anything else that you want to share before we wrap up today, Carl?
No, I've enjoyed being with you today, and enjoyed getting to know you on our chamber board, and glad that you have the same love for Greenville as I do, and many others in our community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Before we wrap up today, just a couple of key takeaways from this really incredible time with Carl. Number one is, really treating the team and building a career for them as a way to really attract and retain top talent in the hospitality industry. Any hospitality listeners listening, I would certainly make sure you kind of pay attention to that answer. Second thing that I thought was just really amazing is meeting people where they are, right? Setting the expectations. If you're the leader, really making sure they're clear, but meeting them where they are to maximize their performance, but to get a message across. Number 3, building out this multi-generational team, making sure you have people who are at the table, and also reading the room when you're talking about different clientele coming in, and just being able to kind of give them that experience. And then last but not least, creating the experience is number one, right? When you're in the hospitality industry, I thought something that was really impactful that Carl said was, You might forget the food, but you never forget the people that you meet and the experiences that you have. Applying that to industries outside of hospitality, I think we have to remember that experiences are the same. So if you're in a corporate 9-to-5 workplace, if you are in a remote job, experiences still matter. So making sure that you kind of take that away as an action step for today. Thanks again for joining us on the show with Camber Parker. Before you go, remember this. The generational landscape is shifting, and our workforce as we know it is not the same workplace we knew in a pre-pandemic world. Our mission is to help you save time and money by identifying these shifts and demystifying generational differences through your training, consulting, and strategy. Contact us today if you're interested in transforming your multi-generational workforce, and let's drive your business towards long-term sustainability and success. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.